Hello everyone, how's it going? My name is Dan the Tutor, and welcome back to another exciting lesson of Algebra 1. This is Lesson 2, Foiling, Distributing, and Factoring. If I were to be honest with you, I would say this lesson, out of all 8 weeks, is probably the most important one because it is something that you are going to be using over and over again in this math class and every math class until literally the end of time. Like even all the way to Calculus 1, you're going to be using, and Calculus 2, you're going to be using this stuff with foiling, distributing, and factoring. So with that, let's get started. So what is foiling? Well, FOIL is just an acronym for first, outer, inner, last. It's the way you multiply two things. Like the example I have here is x plus 1 times x minus 4. If you want to multiply these things, you have to multiply every combination of one factor to the other factor. And I have a very nice graphic here that shows how we're doing this. So first thing you want to do is, well, literally first, the two first terms, x times x. Now, if you don't know, x times x is going to be x squared. If you want to know why, I don't really have a better answer for you right now, then just memorize x times x is x squared. Think of it like this. You have an apple and you want to add another apple to it. Well, you get two apples. In this case, you have two x's, it becomes x squared. We're going to be doing a lot of this today, so don't worry, you'll become a master pretty soon. Next, we have the outer. The two outer positions are the outer x here and the negative 4. Keep that negative in the 4. So basically what you have is x times negative 4. Remember last week we talked about multiplication. You can do it with parentheses, like right here. And x times negative 4 will be negative 4x. Notice I write the number before the variable. So number goes before variable, where x is your variable. This is just something that's good for notation purposes. I'm going to be doing it all day and for the rest of these 8 weeks, so I encourage you to do it as well. Now for the inner, we have 1 times x. Well, that's just going to be 1 times x, which is just going to be x. You don't even need the 1 because it's optional. So that would be right for the inner. And then for the last, we have the positive 1 times the minus 4. And so positive 1 times negative 4 is going to be negative 4. And so then for your final answer, you just have to add these four things together. X squared, negative 4x, x, and minus 4. You will get x squared minus 4x plus x minus 4, just like this. And then it looks like we can simplify the negative 4x and the plus x, so we'll get a final answer of x squared minus 3x minus 4. And that's the basics for foiling. So now, let's look at a bunch of example problems on how to foil, and let's get better at this skill. So for the next one, we have x plus 3 times x plus 9. Again, I am going to foil. Now watch how I do this when I don't have, this whole thing written out, because you don't have to write this out as complicated as I did every time. This is honestly a little overkill. Here's what you can do every time. First is, well, the first. X times x. As we said before, x times x is x squared. Next, it's going to be the outer, which is x times x plus 9. Well, actually, just x times 9. Just this x and that plus 9. And you will get 9x, because x times 9 is 9x. Now I see a big mistake a lot of Algebra 1 students make is they'll write it exactly like I did right here. What's wrong with this? I thought it was 9x. It is, but you gotta write plus. It's always either a plus or a minus between each thing. So don't forget that. The next thing we're going to do is the inner. The inner is 3 times x. So again, plus 3x. And then for the last, it's going to be the 3 times the 9. 3 times 9, hopefully you know that, it's 27. And I can combine the middle terms here, the 9x and the 3x, which will become 12x. So my final answer is x squared plus 12x plus 27. And there's my final answer for that one. Any questions? Okay, good. Let's move on. Number 2, we have x minus 1 times 2x plus 4. So for this one, again, I'm going to FOIL. Now here, I need to do the first one, which is going to be tough. It's going to be x times 2x. Now let's talk about this. When you multiply a variable by a variable and a number, you need to multiply the numbers and the variables separately. Here's what I'm saying. We have x times 2x. As we've said before, x times x is x squared, and this 2, you can think of it as like an extra 2. You can just pull it out in front. What I'm saying is you can actually write this as 2 times x squared, just like this. And again, we're going to be doing this over and over again today, so it's going to make sense by the end, I promise. So that's it for the first. Next is the outer. X times 4, that's going to be 4x, so plus 4x. Now for the inner, we see we have negative 1 times 2x. Because it's negative, it will be a minus here, and it's going to be 1 times 2x. 1 times 2x is just 2x. And then the last, negative 1 times positive 4, that's going to be minus 4. Hopefully that's not too bad for you guys. And now we're going to continue by simplifying the like terms, 4x and minus 2x. We'll get a final answer of 2x squared, and then the 4x minus 2x leaves us with plus 2x, and then minus 4. And there's our final answer. Any questions so far? Okay, great. Now for the next one. We are going to be doing 5x minus 8 times x minus 6. I'm also going to erase a little bit just so I have a little more room here to write. That's better. So now we're going to do, again, first, outer, inner, last. 5x times x. Remember what we just said before. Multiply the x's and the number 5 separately. In other words, x times x is x squared, and the 5 just goes out in front like that. So 5x squared is our first number. Now outer, 5x times minus 6. Well, 5 times 6, that's negative 30, because it's negative 6. So negative 30, and then just bring the x along. So negative 30x. Next, negative 8 times x, the inner, you get minus 8x. And then for the last one, it's negative 8 times negative 6. Two negatives do make a positive when you multiply them together. So it's plus 8 times 6, that's 48. Again, I need to combine like terms, the negative 30x and the minus 8x. You're going to get 5x squared minus 38x plus 48. And that's your final answer. Now, one thing you may be wondering, does the order actually matter? Like, what if I do LIFO? In other words, last, inner, first, outer. Does the order matter if I do a random order? LIFO doesn't actually mean anything, by the way. I'm just making up an example. But last is positive 48. Inner was the minus 8x. First was the plus 5x squared. And the outer is 5x times negative 6, so negative 30x. And as you can see, if you just write it from highest x term, like 5x squared, and then you rearrange it to lowest, you'll get the exact same answer. You'll get 5x squared, the negative 8x minus 30x gives you negative 38x, and then plus 48. It's the exact same answer. So even if you do it out of order, you should get the same answer, but it's always a good idea to write it in this form. In other words, highest power to lowest power. In other words, x squared goes first, then the x, then the no x, the 48. And that's how we do it. Next, number 4. Let me just, again, erase some of this so I have more room. Okay. So for this one, same exact thing we've been doing. But you'll notice the first is the toughest one we've seen yet. You have 10x times 6x. What do? Well, you got to multiply the numbers separately from the x's. So in other words, 10 times 6, that's 60. And x times x is x squared. So there we go. That's it. Not so bad. Next, you have outer, 10x times negative 3. 10 times negative 3 is negative 30. So minus 30x. Then we got the inner, negative 2 times 6x. That's minus 12x. And then the last, negative 2 times negative 3. Again, we have a double negative. That will become plus 6. And then you want to combine like terms. Negative 30x minus 12x is negative 42x. You'll get 60x squared minus 42x plus 6. And there's our final answer for that one. Any questions so far? Fantastic. Now on to number 5. Number 5 we have 3x plus 20 times 4x plus 15. And again, it's the same idea. So the first thing you're doing is 3x times 4x, multiply the numbers separately from the x's. So 3 times 4 is 12, x times x is x squared. Next we do the outer. 3x plus 15 is going to be plus 3 times 15 is 45, and then x. And then the inner plus 20 times 4. 20 times 4 is 80, x. And then the last, 20 times positive 15. Many of you are bad at mental math here. I'll tell you why it's easy. Because you all know what 2 times 15 is. It's 30. And if you add a 0 for the 20, well, then that just means you add a 0 here. So it's 300 plus 300. That's how I do mental math. Now we still have to combine the 45 and the 80. So our final answer will be 12x squared plus 45 plus 80 is 125x, and then plus 300. And there's our final answer for that one. Now I just want to say one more common mistake before we go into the next topic. Sometimes I see people do these lines I've been drawing. Sometimes they do all 4 at once. They'll do first, outer, inner, last, just like this. This is a bad idea. Don't actually write out the lines until you write out your terms. So in other words, you'll notice in this video, and for those of you watching live, every single time I do, like for instance, first 3x times 4x, I then write the term 12x squared. Then I go to the next one, 3x times 15, and I write the term. Then I go to the next one. And that's what you want to do here. You don't want to just write the lines, because the whole reason you're writing the lines is to keep track of what you have already. Because you don't want to double up, you don't want 2 outers, you don't want 2 firsts. Okay, you want to make sure you get each one once. And that's why I do it this way. So now let's talk about distributing. Distributing is probably a word you've heard of before. You've definitely heard of the distributive property, which, in case you're wondering, it's basically exactly what we've been doing this whole time. Distributing and foiling are basically the same thing. Let's write that down. Distributing and foiling are basically the same thing. Foiling is just a special kind of distributing, and I'll show you what I mean when we get to number 4 in a second. But right now, I just want you to remember that whenever we do this multiplication with all these factors and the parentheses, you need to make sure you do every combination once. So here's what I mean. Here's the first one. 3 times x plus 6. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say 3 times x first, which gets me 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times 6, so plus 18. And since this is simpler than foiling, like there was only 3 terms total and 2 combinations, that's it. 3x plus 18, that's your final answer. Now let's go to number 2. X times 4x minus 3. So again, I'm going to do x times 4x. Hopefully you know what to do here. The 4, the number, you just write out first, and then x times x gives you x squared. And then x times negative 3, that's going to be minus 3x. And there's that final answer. So you'll notice a lot of times distributing is easier than foiling. However, sometimes it can be harder. Here's an interesting example, number 3. We have 4 times the quantity 5x squared plus 2x minus 1. Not so bad. Again, I just have to do every combination. So the first combination I can do is 4 times 5x squared. 4 times 5 is 20. And then the x squared just comes along for the ride. I just write it down. Don't change it. Next is 4 times 2x. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, so plus 8x. And then 4 times negative 1, that's just minus 4. And there's your answer. Notice for the first 3 here, there was no like terms to combine. Every FOIL we did, there were like terms to combine. In all of these cases, there was no combining. And that will happen sometimes, especially when we call it in the math community, we call it a monomial times a polynomial. Mono means 1, so like for instance 3 is 1 term, x is 1 term, 4 is 1 term. All of these are monomials. And polynomial just means a lot of terms, or at least more than 1. So for instance, x plus 6 is 2 terms, 4x minus 3, that's 2 terms, 5x squared plus 2x minus 1 is 3 terms. So in other words, you have a monomial times a polynomial. Notice I'm not writing any of this down, it's because it doesn't matter, especially for this summer course. I don't expect you to memorize that. But I'm just saying, basically, sometimes you simplify like terms, sometimes you don't need to. Now, number 4, this is a FOIL. Number 4 is a FOIL. Why? Because you have a binomial times a binomial. I'm going back to that terminology just for a second. Because you have 2 terms times 2 terms. Now, again, you don't need to know what a binomial is, but all you do need to know is first, outer, inner, last. So x times 2x, that's going to be 2x squared. Next is x times 8, which is plus 8x. Then you've got negative 3 times 2x, that's minus 6x. And then negative 3 times positive 8 is minus 24. And again, I'm going to combine like terms here, 8x and then the minus 6x. So that's going to be, final answer, 2x squared, 8x minus 6x is plus 2x, and then minus 24. And there we go. There's our answer for that one. And then the last example I have here, number 5, it's going to be the hardest one of all. Again, I need to give myself some room here because this is pretty complicated. But you're going to notice this is going to be, if you count all the different combinations you can have, you're going to have 6 potential terms here that you're going to be adding together. Let me show you. The first combination is x times x squared. We've never seen x times x squared today, but I bet you can guess. Does anyone have any ideas? Okay, I'm just going to tell you. Basically, if you have 1 apple and you have 2 apples and you multiply them together, you're going to have 3 apples. I know it's not multiplication because 1 times 2 is 2. That's why it's not a good analogy because, well, basically whenever you multiply variables together, you just add the exponents together. In other words, this is going to be x cubed. So even though like x times x squared, it's 1 times 2, you actually add them together to make it x cubed. And you're not going to see too much of that this year for Algebra 1, but I'm just telling you this is what you do. So that's it for x cubed, the first term. Next is x times negative 2x. So that's going to be x times negative 2x. That's going to be minus 2x squared. That's more similar to the ones we were doing earlier today. The third one's going to be x times 5, which is just plus 5x. Notice what I did here was I was very methodical in my approach. I did the x, then all 3 of these in the right one, and now I'm about to do the 7 times all 3 of these in the right factor. So 7 times x squared, that's going to be plus 7x squared, and then 7 times negative 2x, that's minus 14x, and then the last one, 7 times 5, is plus 35. Now we need to be very careful because there's a lot of different terms I'm adding here. Like for instance, x cubed is alone in terms of there's no other x cubed terms, but negative 2x squared plus 7x squared, those can combine. They are like terms. So negative 2 plus 7, that's plus 5x squared. Next is the 5x and the negative 14x. Notice I'm giving myself 2 underlines for these because I want to distinguish them. I want to be able to tell them apart. So 5x minus 14x, that's going to be minus 9x. And then the last one, the plus 35, I mean, there's no other numbers I'm adding or subtracting. So that's it. And this is our final answer. Notice you only have 1 of each term. There's 1 x cubed, there's 1 x squared, there's 1 x, and there's 1 number with no x's at all. That's how you want to write your final answers. You want to combine like terms. And as promised, when I said there would be 6 terms because there's 6 combinations you can multiply, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And it eventually combined to 4 terms. That doesn't matter as much. The important thing is that you get all 6 and then you just simplify. Any questions on that one? Okay, now we have 2 more examples of distributing. It's the hardest ones yet, but don't worry. I'm going to hold your hand walking us through these. So for this one, let's say we have x times 3x squared. What you're going to do is you're going to multiply them together. Remember, the x times x squared gives you x cubed, and the 3, the number, just goes out in front. That's it for the first one. Next, we have x times x, that's just plus x squared. And then we have x times 11, which is plus 11x. Next, we have minus 2 times 3x squared, so it's minus 6x squared. Negative 2 times x is going to be negative 2x. And then the last one, negative 2 times 11, is minus 22. Again, 6 terms, because we have a 2-term expression times a 3-term expression. Anyways, now you have to combine like terms. Looks like the x squared and the minus 6x squared will combine. So first I have to write the 3x cubed because that's first. Now the x squared terms. Remember, that's 1x squared technically, even though the 1's invisible. And 1 minus 6 is negative 5. So negative 5x squared. And then I combine the 11x and then minus 2x. That's going to give us plus 9x. And then minus 22. And there's our final answer. Any questions on that one? Okay, good. And then for number 7, I want you all to try it on your own, including those of you at home watching the recording. I'll probably ask you to pause the video because I'm going to give everyone like 2 minutes to solve this. And if you're doing this on your own, pause the video, and then I'm just going to fast forward. I'm going to edit it so that I'm just going to talk my way through it. Okay, and go. Okay, and time's up. So let's see if you got the right answer. So we have 4x times 2x squared is the first term. 4 times 2 is 8. X times x squared is x cubed. That's what you had to do with the first one. That's not a good cubed. Let me draw that better. There we go. Beautiful cubed. Okay, next. 4x times negative 5x. That's going to be minus 20x squared. Because the 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and x times x gives me x squared. Next is 4x times negative 4. That's just going to be minus 16x. Now we got the inner one with the 6. So 6 times 2x squared is plus 12x squared. 6 times negative 5 is minus 30x. And then 6 times negative 4 is minus 24. And now I get to do my favorite thing, which is combine like terms. Notice once again the 8x cubed is by itself. Now we combine the two x squared terms. Negative 20 plus 12 is minus 8x squared. Negative 16x minus 30x, that's going to be minus 46x. And then the minus 24 is all by its lonesome. And that's it. There we go. Any questions on that one? Hopefully you were able to get it on your own. If not, keep on practicing. We've got some great homework problems for you this week. And now we're going on to factoring. Now, I know I said this lesson is the most important lesson out of all 8 weeks. Factoring specifically is the single most important topic in all of Algebra 1. As a matter of fact, if I were to tell you one goal, if you were to accomplish one goal by the end of Algebra 1, it's get really, really good at factoring. And the reason why is because, first of all, you're going to be using it, again, in every single math class from now until Calculus 2. And here's the important part. It's one of the hardest things to do in all of Algebra 1. In other words, if you don't practice this, like, I'm not going to lie, if you don't practice this at least once a week, you are going to fall behind, you're going to forget it, and you're just not going to be good at it. So my advice to you is, I'm not going to ask you to do factoring problems every single week during the summer, but I will tell you this. If you do that, and you just find problems online, because I don't have, like, not all 8 lessons are about factoring. So there's a good chance that only a few of the lessons in the 8 weeks will have factoring in it. But I will tell you this, if you practice factoring every single week, you are going to be so far ahead of your classmates, it's going to be laughable. You're going to be doing this no problem. You're going to be getting great grades, and you're going to make your parents happy. So factoring, look what I say here. Factoring is the opposite of foiling. What do I mean by that? Basically what I'm saying is, if I started with, let me go to like the first one here, x minus 1 times 2x plus 4. Notice, I don't even think I wrote the answer for number 2. Did I? I guess not. The answer is, oh, that's right, I erased it. That's right, because it was 2x squared plus 2x minus 4. And I needed to erase it to make room. But anyways, what I'm saying here is that this is kind of where you're starting now, and you need to go backwards to get to our 2 factors. A factor is just anything in parentheses like that. And when you factor, it's way harder than foiling or distributing. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually not that bad. So you'll see on the right here, I have this little x thing, and this is what they teach you to help you get good at factoring. Personally, I don't do it this way, so I'm going to do it this way once, the way they want you to do it, and then I'm probably never going to do it again because I don't like it. I think it's confusing. I think it's easier to do it my way. This is like the tool they give you to help it make it easier. But honestly, there's just more steps to remember. It's honestly annoying for me. So I want to actually do it this way. So without further ado, let's talk about C and B here. What the heck does that even mean? Well, remember, all things, this is called a quadratic equation. Not that you need to know that. But basically, if you have x squared plus 5x plus 4, we say it's written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. In other words, your a is the thing in front of the x squared, it's a 1, so 1. B is the thing in front of the x, so b is 5. And c is just the number, so c is 4. And here's what you fill out here. Okay, you fill out multiply to c. Well, c is 4, so you put a 4 in this top box. Add or subtract to b. And the reason why it's add or subtract, I'll explain later. But basically, b equals 5, so it's a positive 5 down here. And now you have to list out the factors of c. So remember, c is 4. What are the factors of 4? You've got two combinations. One combination is 4 and 1. The other combination is 2 and 2. And remember, you need your factors to add or subtract to b. 4 plus 1 is 5. That's what I wanted. 2 plus 2 is 4. That's not what I want. It looks like 4 and 1 is the correct factors. So that's what you write on the left side and the right side. And then your final answer is just writing it like this. First, I like to write out the x, and the parentheses. And then what goes in the missing spots is the correct factors, the 4 and the 1. And they're both positive. So plus 4 plus 1, there's your final answer. Now again, I don't like doing it this way personally. So now I'm going to show you what I do each time because I think it's a little more straightforward. X squared plus 5x plus 4. By the way, if your teacher tells you not to do it this way, and your teacher tells you to do it the x method on the last page, then do it that way. I have no control over that. But as long as I'm in my own classroom, then I'll be teaching it my way, because I think it's better. So, step one, you got to find the factors of c. And c is still the last number, it's the plus 4. So if you think of the factors of 4, it's the same, literally the same thing. It's 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. That part didn't change. Step 2, you need to tell me if it's both positive, comma, both negative, comma, or one of each. You need to tell me that. And what do I mean by both positive, both negative, or one of each? Well, basically, we could have had 3 results here. We could have had positive 1, positive 4. We could have had negative 1, negative 4. Or you could have had one of each. So, like, for instance, a positive 1, negative 4. Or technically, you can have a negative 1 and a positive 4. There's 4 combinations here. And then there's another 4 combinations for the 2 and the 2. But here's how we know which one's right. Instantly. You see the plus sign right there? That means they're either both positive or both negative. I repeat, they're both something. The only time you get one of each is if that was a minus 4. If that was minus 4, then it'd be one of each, and you'd have to figure out which one's positive, which one's negative. Now, how do I know if they're both positive or both negative? You look at that one right there. So see how that's positive? Well, they need to be both positive then. And we're going to be doing a lot of this today, so we're going to get very, very good at identifying this. So in other words, we know the factors, they're both positive. Technically, we don't know if it's 1 and 4 or 2 and 2 yet. I mean, we know because we already did it, but like if you're restarting the problem, we don't know yet. So then step 3 is your factors need to add / subtract to b. And again, b is the middle term, in this case the plus 5 or plus 5x. Now the reason I say add or subtract, you shouldn't be doing both. It's one or the other. And since they're both positive, that means in this example, we're adding. And adding to what? We need to add to 5. We need to add to 5 because that's the middle term, the b. And again, 1 plus 4 is 5, so I choose these factors. Again, I write this. This is still the same. I like to keep it blank, and then I like to fill in the blanks. So the plus 1 goes first, the plus 4 goes second. And by the way, technically the order doesn't matter. X plus 1 and x plus 4 is the exact same thing as x plus 4 and x plus 1. They are both right. They're both the exact same thing. Any questions on what I just said? I know that was a lot. Okay. Now, for the rest of the time, we're just going to be practicing with factoring, and hopefully by the end you can even do some on your own. So for the next one, x squared plus 6x plus 9. Again, I follow my strategy. Step 1 is, what are the factors of 9? Well, you got two pairs. You got 1 and 9, and you got 3 and 3. Now, I don't know which one's right yet. I also need to say, hey, that's a plus sign right there, so that means they're either both positive or both negative. Well, since that's also positive, then it's going to be both positive. Both are positive, which means we're adding. So 1 plus 9 is 10. That is not 6. And 3 plus 3 is 6. And obviously that's right because I need to add to the middle term. So 3 plus 3 is right. So in other words, I write it out, x times x with the parentheses like this. And then filling in the blanks, it's plus 3 here and plus 3 here. And there's your answer. That wasn't so bad, right? Okay, hopefully not. Okay, now let's up the ante a little bit. Let's make this a little harder. So for number 2, x squared plus x minus 6, first, what are the factors of 6? Well, you got 1 and 6, and you got 3 and 2, right? So this time, notice it's a minus sign. Whenever you have a minus sign there, it's one of each. It's one of each, which means you're going to subtract these numbers. The numbers need to subtract to what? Well, what's the middle number? The middle number is plus x. Remember, there's an invisible 1 there, so they need to subtract to 1. Well, 1 minus 6 is 5, or negative 5. It doesn't matter. It's not 1. And then 3 minus 2, that's 1. But now we need to figure out the right order. It's either going to be 3 minus 2, or it's going to be 2 minus 3. How do we know which one's right? Well, 3 minus 2 is positive 1. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Looks like that's the right one. 3 and negative 2. So in other words, when I fill out my factors, they're going to be x plus 3 and x minus 2, and there's our right answer. Again, the order doesn't matter, so you can write x minus 2 times x plus 3, and that's the exact same thing. Any questions on number 2? Okay, good. Now on to number 3. Number 3, we have here x squared minus 18x plus 17. This one's interesting. If you think of the factors of 17, there's literally only one pair. The only pair you have is 1 and 17. So it's definitely 1 and 17. And now we need to figure out like the pluses and the minuses. So notice that's positive, but that's negative. So what does that mean? It means they're both negative. That's the case for both negative. Your plus 17 is positive, but it's minus 18. That's when it's both negative. I still say they add. They're going to add to 18. Like 1 plus 17 is 18, so that's good. But what I'm saying is they're both negative. So in other words, the answer is, if I set it up like this again, it's going to be x minus 1 and x minus 17. And there you go. Now, by the way, it's worth mentioning, there's a way you can check all of your answers to these. You can check your answer to any factoring problem very easily, assuming you're good at foiling. And that is because the way you check your answer is by foiling. So here's the answer we got, x minus 1 times x minus 17. If I ask you to FOIL this, you should get back to the original problem. Well, let's do it. X times x is x squared. The outer x times negative 17 is minus 17x. Negative 1 times x is minus 1x, which I would just write minus x. Or I'll write minus 1x since you're still new to this. And then negative 1 times negative 17 is actually plus 17 because it's multiplication. So now you combine these two things, you get x squared minus 18x plus 17, and that was the original problem. Check. You checked your answer. Great job. Now, do you have to check your answer every time? No. You just do this if you have extra time at the end of the test and you want to make sure you're right, because you can check your answer for any problem, assuming you did the FOIL right. Now, let's say hypothetically you FOILed it and you got it wrong. Let's say you got x squared plus 18x plus 17, and you say this is wrong. If that ever happens, then what you want to do is basically, it means this answer was wrong and you got to try again with the factors. It means that maybe one's positive, one's negative when you got it wrong. Maybe you chose the wrong factors altogether. Whatever it is, you just got to keep trying until you get the right factors. So never give up. Okay, and that's it for number 3. Now on to number 4. Number 4 is interesting. X squared minus 16. What do we do for this one? Well, I'll tell you. The first thing you should do is recognize the fact that this is missing something. It's missing the middle term, right? It's missing your b. It's not really missing it. It's just 0. Like you've got x squared plus 0x minus 16. And now the problem is exactly the same as we've been doing. So first the factors of 16, there's 3 pairs. You got 1 and 16, you got 2 and 8, and you got 4 and 4. And since this is minus, that means it's one of each. And since it's one of each, that is when you subtract your numbers, right? So 1 minus 16 is 15 or negative 15. 2 minus 8 is 6 or negative 6, which is still not what I want. And 4 minus 4 is 0, and that's the right one. 4 and 4 are the right ones. Now, the good news about this one, we're lucky, because one's positive, one's negative. Does it matter which one you say is positive and which one's negative? No, it does not, because the order doesn't matter. So one answer is x plus 4 times x minus 4. That's correct. And then the other answer that's also correct is x minus 4 and x plus 4. And that's it for that one. Any questions? Okay, good. Now on to number 5. So for number 5, we have x squared plus 5x minus 6. So once again, I factor 6. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 3 and 2. Since that's a minus sign, again, it's one of each. Now you have to figure out which one's positive and which one's negative. Actually, we don't even know what factors are right. So for instance, 1 minus 6 is 5 or negative 5. And that looks like the right one right there because we want the 5 in the middle. So it's either going to be 1 minus 6 or it's going to be 6 minus 1. Well, 1 minus 6 is negative 5. 6 minus 1 is positive 5. I want positive 5, so it looks like 6 minus 1 is correct. So in other words, when I build my factors like this, I'm going to say x plus 6 and x minus 1, and that's it. Any questions on that one? Nope. Okay, good. So now hopefully you're getting good at this, and you can actually try some of these on your own. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is, for these next 3, we're going to do number 6 first. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to solve this, and then we'll move on to, we'll do the same thing for 7 and then for 8. So go ahead, if you're watching this on a recording, pause the video, try it on your own, and then unpause it when you want to, ready for the solution. Okay, and here's the solution. First thing you do is for 15, you want to do 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. And then what you want to say is, well, since this is minus, it's going to be one of each again. One of each. And that means we're subtracting, and we need to subtract to get a negative 2 here. Well, 1 minus 15 is 14. 3 minus 5 is 2. So it looks like it's going to be 3 and 5. Now the question is it 3 minus 5 or is it 5 minus 3? Well, 3 minus 5 is negative 2. 5 minus 3 is positive 2. I want 3 and negative 5 because I want minus 2. So the answer is x plus 3 times x minus 5. And again, if you want to check your answer, you can FOIL this and you'll get back to the original if you do it right. So that's it for number 6. Now number 7, same thing. If you're watching the recording, pause the video. If you're doing this live, then just go ahead and we will touch base again in 2 minutes. Okay, go. And now I'm going to show you the solution. So here we go. The factors of 18, there's 3 pairs. There's 1 and 18, there is 2 and 9, and there is 3 and 6. So now for this one, again, since it's positive, that means they're both going to be either positive or negative. And since it's minus 9, that means they're both negative. They're both negative. So if they're both negative, that means you add them together and you need to add them up to 9 or negative 9. Well, 1 plus 18 is 19, 2 plus 9 is 11, and 3 plus 6 is 9. And that's the one I want. So 3 and 6 are right. We said both of these are negative, so you can instantly go to your final answer, which is x minus 3 and x minus 6. And there we go. Easy as that. And then the last one we have, number 8, x squared plus 22x minus 48. Again, I want you to try this on your own, but before you do, I just want you to know this one's the hardest one out of all of them, and that's because there are, let me just count again. There are 5 factor pairs of 48 and only one of them is right. Another hint I want to tell you. Do you have to write out all 5 factor pairs? No, technically you don't. You can actually just stop whenever you get to the one that adds up to 22 in the middle or subtracts to 22 in the middle. So with that as your hint, go ahead, try this on your own. I'll give you 2 minutes. And we're going to come back. Here's the answer. So negative 48, here are the factors. You got 1 and 48, you got 2 and 24, you've got 3 and 16, you have 4 and 12, and you have 6 and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a lot. And we know because it's minus, it's going to be one of each. So now I just go down the list, and as soon as I get to positive 22, I stop. So 1 minus 48 is 47. 2 minus 24 is 22. Ah, there we go. We're done already. Great. So now I need to figure out which one's positive, which one's negative. So there's 2 options. You can have 2 minus 24, or you can have 24 minus 2. 2 minus 24 is negative 22, and 24 minus 2 is positive 22. So it looks like it's going to be 24 and negative 2. And our final answer will be x plus 24 times x minus 2. And there's our answer. So that's it for today's lesson. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to be submitting the recording within the hour, and I'll also be posting this week's homework in an email as well. If you do have any questions, please stick around. I'll be happy to answer them. If not, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.